Welcome to The Explainer. We're about to dive into one of the most powerful stories of liberation ever told. We're talking about the very beginning of the book of Exodus.
So here's what we're going to cover. We'll start with how a blessing turned into bondage in chapter 1. Then we'll meet Moses, a prince turned fugitive, in chapter 2. Chapter 3 brings us to that incredible burning bush revelation. Then in chapter 4, we'll see a reluctant prophet get his mission. And finally, chapter 5, the big confrontation in Pharaoh's court. We're going to see a people go from favored guests to slaves and watch as a really unlikely hero starts to emerge. All right, let's jump right in.
Okay, first up, from blessing to bondage. This is all about how a nation's growth ended up sparking a tyrant's fear. Our story kicks off centuries after Joseph, and at this point, the family of Israel is doing really well in Egypt.
You know, it's amazing to think about how this all began. It wasn't with an army or a huge migration. It started with just 70 people. That's it, Jacob's family, coming down to Egypt to escape a famine. They were just guests, a tiny group in this massive empire. But fast forward about 400 years, and that small family, wow, they exploded in number. I mean, they were fruitful, they increased abundantly, multiplied, and became super mighty. They weren't just a small community anymore. They were basically a nation inside another nation, literally filling the land. And this incredible success, well, it ended up becoming their curse. See, a new pharaoh rose to power, a king who, as the text says, knew not Joseph. He had no connection to that history. He just looked out and saw this massive population of foreigners, and he got scared. He saw their strength not as an asset, but as a huge threat. So his fear just snowballs into this brutal, systematic oppression. First, he hits them with harsh slavery. Then he orders the midwives to kill all the newborn Hebrew boys. And when that doesn't work, he issues a terrifying decree: throw every single male baby into the river. So let's move on to chapter 2, Moses, the Prince, and the Fugitive. We're looking at this unlikely hero's origins and his exile. And here's the crazy part. It's right in the middle of this policy of death that their deliverer is born. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Moses' early life is a story of just unbelievable contrasts. On one hand, he's born a Hebrew, a member of the slave class, literally marked for death from birth. But on the other hand, thanks to his mother's quick thinking with that basket, he's found and adopted by Pharaoh's own daughter. So he grows up as a prince of Egypt, living in the very lap of luxury, in the same palace that ordered his death. And then comes the turning point. As an adult, his two worlds just slam into each other. He sees an Egyptian beating one of his own people, a Hebrew slave, and something inside him just snaps. His sense of justice, his hidden identity, it all boils over. He kills the Egyptian and hides the body in the sand. And with that one act, his life as a prince is over. It just shatters. He has to run, becoming a fugitive from the only home he's ever known. So Moses escapes to Midian, and for the next 40 years, he's just a shepherd. He's living this quiet, anonymous life. But back in Egypt, things are only getting worse for his people. The suffering is intense, and their groaning, their cries from this brutal slavery, they finally reach God. And the text says God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That ancient promise was about to be activated. Which brings us to chapter 3, the burning bush revelation. This is that divine encounter in the desert. And God's response to their cries, well, it doesn't come with thunder and lightning or a big army. It comes in this incredibly mysterious, personal encounter on a forgotten mountainside. So picture this, Moses is now 80 years old. He's out there tending sheep, same old routine, when he sees something that makes him stop in his tracks. A bush is on fire, but it's not burning up. It's just blazing away, not turning to ash. He thinks, I've got to turn aside and see this incredible sight. Why isn't the bush burning? And that little step of curiosity, that's what changes everything. And from that fire, God calls his name. And he lays out the entire plan. He says, I have seen my people suffering, I have heard their cry. He makes it clear he hasn't forgotten them. And then comes the big one. I am sending you, Moses, to Pharaoh. The mission? Bring the Israelites out of Egypt and into a good land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Talk about a job off. Now, Moses is, understandably, completely floored. He asks a pretty reasonable question. Okay, when I go to them, who do I say sent me? And God's answer is one of the most famous and profound statements in the entire Bible. I am that I am. Think about that. It's not just a name like Bob or Steve. It's a statement of eternal, self-existent being. This is the ultimate authority. This is the name he's supposed to take back to Pharaoh. All right, on to chapter 4, a reluctant prophet's mission.
This is all about overcoming doubt with divine power. Because even after this incredible, direct command from the great I Am, Moses is, well, he's terrified. He's full of doubt. I mean, can you blame him? He's been a shepherd for 40 years. He's a wanted man in Egypt. He's not a leader. He's a fugitive.
So to help with Moses' biggest fear, what if they don't believe me, God gives him 3 signs. And these aren't just parlor tricks. They're powerful demonstrations. First, his shepherd's rod turns into a serpent. Second, his hand becomes leprous and then is healed. And third, water from the Nile will turn to blood when he pours it on the ground. Each of these is a direct challenge to the powers and gods of Egypt.
But Moses still isn't convinced. He throws out one last excuse, and it's a really human one. He says, "Oh my Lord, I am not eloquent. I am slow of speech and of a slow tongue." Basically, I'm a terrible public speaker. But what's amazing is that God doesn't get mad or take back the offer. He provides a solution. He says, fine, your brother Aaron, he can talk. He'll be your spokesman.
So, with every excuse shot down and every need provided for, Moses finally says yes. He heads back to Egypt. And what is he armed with? Not a sword, not royal power, just that simple shepherd's staff, which has now become the rod of God.
And that brings us to Chapter 5, Confrontation in Pharaoh's Court. This is the first test, and let me tell you, it comes with a brutal backlash. As soon as they're back in Egypt, Moses and Aaron waste no time. They walk right into the court of the most powerful man on earth.
And how does it go? It is a complete and utter disaster. Pharaoh's response is just pure contempt. He basically says, "Who is the Lord that I should listen to him and let Israel go? I don't know this Lord, and no, I will not let Israel go." To him, the God of a bunch of slaves is just a joke.
And Pharaoh doesn't just say no, he retaliates. And it's absolutely brutal. He accuses the Israelites of being lazy, of being idle, so he makes their work impossible. He tells his taskmasters, you're not going to give them straw for their bricks anymore. They have to go find their own straw, but, and get this, they still have to make the exact same number of bricks each day. It's a cruel, calculated move to crush their spirits and make them hate Moses for even asking.
So the mission has backfired. Horribly, the people are suffering more than ever, and they turn on Moses. And Moses himself is just broken. He cries out to God, "Lord, why have you brought this trouble on this people? Why did you ever send me?" The story doesn't start with a triumphant victory. It starts with total failure and a massive crisis of faith, leaving us right on the edge of our seats, waiting to see what happens next.